Good afternoon, everyone. Going to start you with a question. How big of an inbound event is there to justify full destruction of the global economy and social retraining we're experiencing during this lockdown? The headlines in South Africa of thieves stealing entire fields of spinach. That's an effect. Cause. Cooler periods being ushered in by low solar activity. Grand Solar Minimum now making corporate news headlines across the world. And there's great analysis amongst the deflections, cosmic rays, electrical disturbances in our atmosphere, global cooling, because the rapid regional warming 14,700 years ago was not because of an SUV or a factory. Sea levels were lower. We should be looking to see what cities and structures were built at the edges of the shorelines because the rise and fall of civilization, solar activity. We've just passed the high point of the roller coaster, and it's all downhill from here. Food production, that is. Perhaps that would explain the lockdown. In the year 2020, it's so important to keep your body functioning at optimal performance. And collagen may be the closest thing we'll ever get to a real fountain of youth. After all, collagen is the most abundant protein in your body and essentially the glue that holds it all together. When you're middle-aged, you're only producing half the collagen you did in your youth. My focus is about digestive health because the change in our diets from foods being unavailable, moving to seasonal foods, and the entire spectrum of availability of foods changing. There's so much more to talk about with the benefits of collagen. You can visit healthwithadapt2030.com to learn more. The link's in the description box below. Quick history lesson here about bubbles bursting, because right now we're seeing central banks bursting their bubbles. Let's look at the tulip price, 1636 to 1637. Why did I choose these dates here? So using this as the start point of a Grand Solar Minimum intensifying, Valentina Zarkova's work here shows when the magnetic fields of the sun are going to be canceling, causing electrical disturbances as well as effects in our Earth's atmosphere, as well as the crust, volcanism, and earthquakes. Now add into this the planetary geometry. Top left 79 AD, bottom left 2024. You'll see that we're going to mimic something that hasn't occurred in 2,000 years. The electromagnetic effects of the four gas giants pulling us, the Earth, as well as the sun being in a very reduced state of activity, we're definitely going to start seeing electromagnetic effects and very strange weather phenomenon affecting crop growth. Now, how intense is it going to be? See, this is the unknown at the moment. There's a lot of debate around it, but I am going to pose the question here. How big of an inbound event is there to justify what you're seeing now currently with the full destruction of the global economy? A full reset, ushering in digital currency, and this social retraining that we're experiencing during the lockdown. Everything in our lives has changed so dramatically, so quickly. So how big is this event that is inbound, that this needs to happen, that governments around the world are willing to sacrifice everything in terms of control? This is the question that really needs to be posed right now, because it seems that we are at the end of a civilization cycle. Not just the fourth turning on its 80-year generational cycle, not on just a 400-year Grand Solar Minimum cycle, but it seems we're at something much larger, more heavy, powerful, at like a 3,600-year cycle. This would justify the means that we're seeing right now. Not everybody's going to be carried through. The economy would evaporate anyway, so I absolutely see clearly why they're doing these powers that be what they're doing. And then add this seemingly unrelated piece of the puzzle into it. Now you're seeing an enormous amount of mainstream headlines coming out talking about the sun entering this solar minimum. So they were all hoping that the sun would have kicked off by now into solar cycle 25, as we were told by the experts, quote unquote, that it would. Now we're at record-setting levels of low activity. And they even talk about excess cosmic rays being allowed to bombard our atmosphere and our crust, no less, and the electrochemistry of the Earth's upper atmosphere. Well, upper atmosphere will also trigger down to lower atmosphere and then to crust. That's what electricity does. It moves from high to low or low to high. Depends on the differential there. And obviously, if our crust is more overly charged because the sun stepped down, there's going to have to be an equilibrium happening. Now, what's so interesting is they also talk about the consecutive record sunspot blank days on the disk, otherwise known as the face of our sun. This is in India. It's also been in Forbes, BBC, CNN, and wherever you're looking across the vast array of corporate media. Why are they talking about it now so earnestly? To really inform you something's wrong with the sun. It's not acting as it should. So then I'll drop right back here into the Eurasian ice sheet collapsed, raising seas 8 meters, which is 24 feet for those of you in the U.S. Now, this occurred 14,000 years ago, and the astonishing rapid ice melt occurred because of rapid regional warming. Now, this is something you won't really hear about in the surface debate of what moves the climate, because it's hard to explain how 14,000 years ago there was rapid regional warming. No SUVs, no factories, but it warmed so much that our sea levels rose 24 feet. What was it that caused this dramatic rise and fall in the temperature? So here's the graph that accompanied the story. And you can see on the left side there, we were in deep glaciation until about 20,000 years ago. We started to step out of it. So what was the trigger mechanism to stop the glaciation phase, to bring us into a warming phase? We needed an enormous amount of heat to do that. And then suddenly, massive increases in sea level rise due to melting ice. What turned on the heat? This is the thing that we should be asking also. And what kind of repeating cycle are we in? What's the duration of the cycle repeat? And on a side note, I would also ask you to open your mind to the concept that there were prior civilizations on our planet. That this was the coastal region back during the glaciation and into this point here that's referenced in the article. So like our civilizations now, we build on the coasts. We put vast cities along coastlines and riverbeds, river estuaries, mouths of rivers, ports. Should we not be looking for these cities right out where the old demarcation of where the sea started off of the continental shelves? I bet we'd find an enormous amount of unknowns out there. Now, with that being said, if the globe can heat that quickly, could it also not cool that quickly? Now, these grand solar minimum events generally cool surface temperatures of our planet about 2 to 3 degrees centigrade, not Fahrenheit. This has a vast push on our crop production, or I should say lack thereof. The cooler it gets, the less food we can grow, the shorter the grow seasons become. We're seeing this everywhere globally, and with food being the most important thing to keep our societies moving forward, it's almost like spend into oblivion, keep the system going as long as you can. Something has definitely changed in the urgency for the response to this solar cycle here. I personally feel, this is my own opinion, that everything was moving along and they were waiting to see, and I'm saying they, the scientists, the elite, the governments around the world, to see if solar cycle 25 kicked off as a normal. Because if it had, I really believe that what we're experiencing now would not have happened. They would have strung it out, but something definitely sent the signal that this is it. We're not going to grow enough food to feed the planet, and whatever needs to take place right now to lock it down, to preemptively grab control of the global food supply from the field to the supermarket and the total assets of the U.S. Federal Reserve. Now, this is interesting because the Fed balance sheet eclipsed $7 trillion. The holdings are above $9 trillion, and they're talking about this very graphic you're looking at here to go up to $20 trillion. Now, with that being said, we're going to go into a hyperinflationary event. So what is it that burn everything to the ground right now to set up for either the post-event economy, anything that you could think of that a government would need to survive through this time of, say, 20 years of very reduced crop yields and how that would affect society? Well, this is in South Africa just a few days back. The same thing's beginning to happen. When food gets incredibly expensive, people are going to take advantage of that. They stole entire fields of spinach. Now, in orders of magnitude of life and death, this is nothing. Yet already crime is coming to this level here. And also, why is it focused on food? Why don't they just spend the time drilling into a bank vault? Why would you harvest an entire field of spinach? Must be more value in that. because there seem to be a few global, far out of the normal weather events, beyond the floods that we're seeing and the collapses of dams in Michigan, etc. This is one specific example I'm talking about just for crops right here. Northern China, this place called Heirloom. It's on the border with North Korea. They had this massive, unprecedented blizzard that buried everything. They're still unable to plant up there. The ground's too hard. It is so far behind what is considered the normal planting season. And then magically, the government of China locked that entire area down, forbidding even farmers from going into the fields to plant. Is the lockdown being used as an excuse to then explain away the food shortages because the farmers can't get in the fields? Makes sense. Or was that lockdown in Heilongjiang a result of, farmers are not going to be able to plant? They're going to start talking. The world will see the reduced yield coming out of there, so minimal compared to the last 100 years of data they have in that area, that it would send a huge agricultural red flag, because every single Grand Solar Minimum, China collapses. It's a great case study to see on the overlap of areas that would be pummeled by this Grand Solar Minimum cooling intensification, where we grow crops on our globe right now, compared to what the lockdown situation is in these very same countries. Because the lockdown gives an excuse why the crops are not being planted, why the yields will be incredibly minimal this year. And just a quick FYI, inbound are some incredible price shocks, because as I look across the regular average planting dates, Europe, Asia, North America, so far behind in all the continents, so far behind. It's astounding how far behind it is right now, how low our crop yields are going to be at the end of the year. But again, the excuse is in place. So China needed a second food growing area. They're going to be using North Africa. And suddenly the U.S. is back in Somalia, so it makes you wonder, who's going to be trying to control whose sea routes or cut off what kind of supply routes across the Indian Ocean. Something vast is going on with a shift to the point where we're getting reset right now by the sun, and governments across the planet are reacting to that preemptively. You're going to have to grow some of your own food, so how much do you know about growing? I use this company, TrueLeafMarket.com, for my seeds, herb kit seeds. I do a lot of microgreens, high nutrition, really fast and easy to grow, and then others going for a full garden, because it is that time right now, specifically while gardening with the moon. This is the first solid day now coming in with the new moon cycle to be able to plant. I encourage you to take a look at what types of fruits, vegetables, crops, or anything you can grow right around your own local area. TrueLeafMarket.com. The link's in the description box below. I appreciate you watching. There's much more going on behind the scenes. The distraction is the media, what you're seeing right now. What they're distracting you from is the sun. Hope you do your own research. Links are also in the description box for all tonight's stories, and I'll see you next video.